Okay, so I'm gonna apologize now for any sniffles you hear in this video. Southern California is on fire, like it is every year. This time it's a toxic chemical fire burning in LA that's wafting right towards us. So I'm dying slowly in the inside and the outside, so. Okay, so Valve's Steam Machine, easily the most anticipated piece of hardware for the last year, was really, it was kind of teased and announced last year. The first Steam Machine, if you've been around long enough, like 12, 13 years ago or whatever, was a complete flop, but it kind of showed the direction of Valve wanting to get into the hardware space. Since then, we've had the Steam Deck, the Valve, the Frame is coming, which is their VR headset. The Steam controller has actually been very highly positively received. Not so much on the new Steam Machine. Now, this is basically going to be my super salty as a 20-something year. Actually, I need to look this up. Do I even have Steam on this machine? I do have Steam on this machine. This is a Steam Machine. Anyway, no, stupid. I know. But this is me coming to you basically as a 22-year Steam member. It was old enough to drink last year. I'm only level 13 on there though, which is kind of funny. That's because that's like game rating and XP rating and all that stuff. But anyway, I digress. I kind of sat back for the last 24 hours to really sort of just digest what I'm seeing, really not listening to other people's reviews. I didn't want to be influenced by that. It's pretty obvious that it's a lackluster announcement and launch. With that said, all three of us did put ourselves on the list for all four of them because we're trying to at least get our hands on one here because ironically, as long as this channel's been around, I have zero contacts at Valve. And that's fine. I would absolutely prefer to approach this review from a pure consumer perspective rather than, the fact that no matter how unbiased you try and be, there's always going to be some slight level of bias or potential influence if you receive a product from people. I mean, we do our best we can to make sure that none of that has any effect on it, but there's always going to be a slightly different approach into the emotion behind a product when you put your own money on there. That's why the 5090s you see around here, almost all of them have been purchased. That's why almost every build you've seen on this channel this year, with the exception of a handful, have been completely purchased by me because of the fact that it does change the perspective. So that's what you're getting today. A consumer perspective of somebody that is a gaming enthusiast, a PC enthusiast, very minimal console gamer in my family, if you will, and even my kids. And so I just have some things to talk about because I don't feel like this is Valve's fault or Valve's problem. It just goes to show how big the current problem of hardware is when a massive company like Valve can be influenced by the current state of economics. If there's anything we learned recently is the fact that even G.Skill, is a customer of the NAND needed for making their modules, and that's why their stuff's so expensive too, because their prices that they acquire the raw materials to put together their DIMMs for are also really, really expensive. Anyway, as you guys I'm sure have seen by now, the starting 512 gigabyte version is over $1,000. Now here's the thing, if any of you say that's okay, and you also gave me shit for using a 512 gigabyte drive in our AI versus J versus Salesman challenge, you're a hypocrite. Congratulations. You can go F yourself as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, it uses hardware that is already dated. And this has kind of been like the Valve way. The Valve way is to tease something you're working on so far in advance that when you announce it, it sounds super cool. And it's relevant at the time. But then by the time it comes out, the hardware which you locked yourself into is already old and obsolete. So unfortunately, it might have seemed cool in 2023. In 2026, the hardware is obviously clearly lackluster. Because the hardware is lackluster and gaming has moved on, the industry has moved on, it's relying heavily obviously on upscaling. Now the equivalent performance, if you will, is right around like a 2700X, like a little faster than 2700X in terms of its CPU, and a little bit behind like a 3700 or 3750, I can't remember which CPU it was, but that's old, right? They talk about this being Zen 4, but it's a super cut down Zen 4 because they obviously have very limited power and thermal capability of the unit. Remember, it's an integrated PSU, it's an integrated CPU, it's all custom board. It's not like they just threw off-the-shelf hardware in there. Because of the size of the internal power brick and the consumption and the power usage and the heat, they have to really just scale all of that down. So unfortunately, you take an older CPU and then you slow it down and reduce the power limit available to it. obviously it's going to feel even slower and older. Now, obviously, they're also relying heavily on upscaling. Now, the GPU lands around a 6600 XT. That is still pretty old by today's standards. They're really only targeting like 1080p. Anyway, obviously the price is the biggest elephant in the room, right? The base model of 1049, the higher capacity model of 2 terabytes, 1349. Totally weird to me that they omitted 1 terabyte entirely. I mean, if the 1 terabyte was 1049, it'd be a slightly better story. But as we know, consumer SSDs are all but disappearing right now. The controller is sold separately, which is so ironic considering the entire use case at which Valve is targeting as a console should always come with the controller. That controller is half the experience of what the Steam machine is supposed to be. So the fact that they even sell 2 SKUs without it is just absolutely mind-boggling to me. It's more expensive than a PS5. It's more expensive than an Xbox Series X, but it's designed to compete directly with PC, specifically because it's a Steam library. So already, who is it targeting? Is it targeting console gamers? Or is it targeting PC gamers? Or is it targeting some weird, even more narrow niche between the two? So it's really confusing to figure out exactly what their intent was there. Now I have some criticism here. It says that they don't want to subsidize hardware, which is fine. I mean, I get it. They're not in the business to lose money, but we're accustomed. Look, here's the thing. If you want to call this a console and compete against consoles, the reason why Xbox and Sony have been able to sell consoles almost exclusively at a loss for the entire time that the consoles have been around since like the PS1, right? When we talk about the PlayStation, PS2, PS3, PS4, 5, and all the Xbox, they've almost always lost some money or maybe barely broke even on the consoles because they make their money on the digital exclusives. You don't have digital exclusives on Valve, on Steam. You don't. It's open to everybody. You already have a PC. You get to play the same games as the Steam box or the Steam machine. So they can't really subsidize that way, but Steam also makes a cut of every game sold on Steam. So they could have, in my opinion, still subsidized the price somewhat. Maybe they are still somewhat. I don't know what their costing is. I did watch some of Linus's video where they had the discussion with Valve and kind of talked about some of the subsidized stuff. And yes, Valve is disappointed about this pricing too. Remember, they are a customer of these hardware companies, but I digress. They still make a cut on every game sold on Steam. That is why Gabe has been able to buy this year a $70 million mansion in Florida to add to his portfolio of property and estates. It's the reason why Gabe has not 1, but 2 mega yachts, with one of them having a submarine garage built into it for his deep dive expeditions that he does for fun. We are in an age where CEOs are highly scrutinized by consumers when you are in the public's eye with these extremely extravagant lifestyles built on the backs of the people that have gotten you to where you are. Not just the employees, but the consumers. Look, if that bed is good enough for Jensen and Lisa Sue to lie in, it's good enough for Gabe to lie in too, okay? I'm just gonna throw that out there. It's a bad look when you're talking about not trying to subsidize the price, even though you make a cut on every single purchase that takes place on Steam, while also building and buying millions and hundreds of millions of dollars worth of property and yachts. Gabe has, last time I looked it up, Gabe has like one of the top 5 largest yachts in the world, built one game sale at a time. So I just want to throw that out there. That's where I'm a little salty on the whole pricing side of it. Rumors show that they were targeting about $550 to $600 for this. That would have been a much better story today. Obviously, they're not going to take a $500 loss on every unit. But I'm just saying, if we're talking about the I hate CEOs mentality that so many people have today, that's one that can't be overlooked. I'm just going to throw that out there. Now, look, I'm all for people who build their fortunes and enjoying their life. I just don't know how much Gabe is truly involved in running up the company anymore. I just don't. But you can't deny the optics on that. Anyway, moving on. It's obviously a terrible value proposition today, considering it's running an older Zen 4 CPU, a semi-custom RDNA 3 graphics with only 8 gigabytes of VRAM and 16 gigabytes of system memory. Now, I think we had kind of anticipated that it was potentially going to be unified memory, so the fact that it's split is kind of interesting. But it is running DDR6 for the graphics side, and so obviously running 16 gigabytes of DDR5 for the CPU side. Now, the problem is in 2026, gaming heavily expects FSR, which it has. Frame generation is actually becoming a more norm to have to turn on these days, which it does not have, which is kind of crazy to talk about in 2026. Remember, because it's on 2022, 2023 hardware. That's fine today. But given the lackluster performance that it truly has in raw performance, and if gaming developers, which we've been already talking about, and I know Hardware Unboxed has talked about some of this too, that frame gen is something that developers have been kind of leaning on as the band-aid for optimization in a lot of titles. If it doesn't have that, if it feels old in 2026, what's it going to feel like in 2028? Nobody's going to be buying a $1,000 plus console and expecting only a couple of years usage out of it. Do you know my PS5 is not even hooked up. My PS4 is still what's hooked up in my living room because I've been too lazy to unplug it, and because I can't lay the PS5 flat where my PS4 is, I've just been like, fuck it, I'm not even going to bother hooking it up. So my point is, people would expect, obviously, easily 5-7 more years usage out of their console. The reason why the Steam machine is going to start feeling very old very quickly is, again, it's running PC titles. And the PC landscape and the evolution and the expectation with hardware is constantly changing. You know what doesn't change at the beginning of a let's say PlayStation 5. You know what hasn't changed at the beginning of the PlayStation 5 and today? The PlayStation 5. It's still the PlayStation 5. Developers building for those consoles, for games, have a consistent set of hardware that isn't changing. If anything changes, it gets slightly better. They get a slight performance bump, but the core structure of the game remains the same. They're not trying to make a game that has to deal with an infinite amount of combinations of hardware. Steam library is tons of developers, both indie, AAA, and everything in between, having to try and account for God knows what combination of hardware. So the Steam machine doesn't offer a value in terms of, hey, the gaming experience is going to be consistent, because the development for it is not going to be consistent. And I highly doubt developers are going to be developing here's a full PC version and here's a Steam machine optimized. They could, but right now, gaming is not a great industry for a lot of these developers. And with the game studio shutting down constantly left and right, it feels like layoffs everywhere. How could they possibly have the manpower and the funds to try and develop 2 versions of the game for PC alone to try and deal with Steam machine and PC gaming, especially if it's a developer that's already having to build a PlayStation version of it as well? So that's one of the major issues that I see with the Steam machine that I don't see many people talking about. I don't see many people talking about the fact that it truly can't be a console competitor. Sure, it might have a great experience now in terms of what the menu feels like. I know I bring up Linus's video because I watched his short and I watched his issue before. Anyway, it doesn't matter. He's so excited about being able to turn the fucking volume up and down with the controller. Even when no console do I have now, do I try and use the controller to turn volume up and down. I just grab it for my TV remote, which is what every normal sane person does when they have a console hooked up to their TV. They just turn it up with their remote. So I don't find that to be a value that overshadows any of the pricing type of stuff for me personally. Anyway, right now, it's heavily relying on FSR just because of the hardware limitations. So whereas FSR would have been a nice thing to have, it is now a need to have for the console because the hardware is so aged. So what's it going to feel like in 4 years, in 2030? Right? It's going to feel so obsolete. It's going to feel so behind the curve, just like the Steam Deck is versus every other handheld that came out after it before the crazy $1,700 claw exists today. But the crazy thing is, with so many more titles becoming like AI dependent, like I said, specifically with with frame gen and multi-frame gen, doesn't exist on the Steam machine. So I'm just really curious as to what the future is going to look like for it as the games move on, like GTA 6. What's that going to play like and look like on the Steam machine? The other thing is the Steam machine doesn't really have any like one major killer feature that is just like, this is what the Steam machine is all about. A PC that you can sit on your couch and turn on with a controller is about the only thing that I see that being what is like the most exciting thing out of the box. And I'm building one of those systems myself. We're doing it again. We're going to build an equivalent like small form factor ITX build that will run circles all around the Steam machine for roughly the same price. And here's the thing. It is a fair comparison because you are targeting PC gamers with your PC gaming library on the Steam machine. So you can't really say, well, this is for console because it's not grabbing a console library. It's not connecting to PSN. It is not even connecting to Xbox. Right? The Xbox library. Only Xbox games that exist on Steam will show up on this library. So it's not even that. It is still just Steam. So it took years to arrive and everything kind of moved past it after it was announced. Like it was kind of like, oh man, this is cool. And then life moved on and Valve took years and years to have it come out, which is what they typically do. And that's why now you can see millions and millions of views on YouTube right now about the people that were just like, I think holding their breath. And then this was like, oh, okay. It was like the Star Wars, you were the chosen one. But it's like, what if Anakin had showed up in his 40s? Like it just took him that long to arrive, right? And it's kind of like, oh, dude, the war's over. Oh, really? What do you mean the war's over? Like it's just Valve's way of too little, too late, but giving everyone else the idea, technically. So anyway, I'm curious now what you guys think of this. So here's the way I kind of look at this now. Like Act 1, if this was a story, Act 1 is the dream. The dream was a true PC console that you can play your PC games on in a console-like experience, okay? That was the dream. And that not many PC gamers were actually pushing back against that because around the time the first Steam machine, Steam box, it was kind of called back then, came out, that was around the time home theater PC was really kind of a thing, not just for like Plex servers and such, but actually to be able to play PC games on your TV. So the idea about the dream was a really, it was a fun one that a lot of us were looking forward to. Then there was the delay. There was like the concept announcements and such, and then the silence. Now in that delay, unfortunately for Valve, was the component cost increase, graphics card cost increase, memory shortages, storage shortages, AI-driven demand impacting the entire supply chain, and then obviously an entire market shift of buyers. Right now, PC is at the lowest interest in the almost 15 years that I've been doing this channel, almost 15 years. I have never seen it be this disinteresting, but that's because price has extremely outpaced the reward of it, if you will. Or plenty of people would still see the reward, but the price has completely just pushed them out. And then the problem, $1,049 starting price, hardware that doesn't feel cutting edge, heavily relies on FSR, no obvious answer to NVIDIA's AI rendering roadmap, and fixed hardware aging concerns like we just talked about. And then Act 4, Valve history repeating itself. There's a reason why Half-Life 3 is such a meme. Do you remember when Valve used to make games? They made great games. They truly did. But then they got into the distribution platform, which they figured out that was the money printing model. And then now they're trying to get into the hardware scene. Again, just so far behind the curve that I can't see this being a successful product. It really makes me wonder how long, because that's the pricing today. If RAM and storage continues to go up exponentially as it is, I can't see this price even lasting that long. It's almost like an introductory price. I was looking forward to this. I truly was. There wasn't very much that got me excited over the last few years of doing this. And this was one of them. And unfortunately, I think just like a lot of you, I just felt like, I feel like I'm sitting in the doldrums right now. I'm just sitting on my pirate ship, sails up, or not up, but sails are deployed, just hanging there, water flat as glass, just melting away. That's what it feels like right now. I'm just curious now. What do you guys feel? I'm like I said, we all three of us put in a request for all four just because we need to get our hands on one. And even if I'm going to spend $1,400 because that's the one that comes my direction, because that's the only one that was available, I'm going to spend the $1,400 plus bucks just to know that I have the firsthand experience that all my fears right now are valid. What do you guys think? Sound off in the comments below. As always, we'll see you in the next one, which hopefully won't be as depressing because I'm having a lot of fun with Skunkworks and my CNC stuff. So if you want to see more, if you want to see me sharing my CNC journey with Learning Fusion 360 and actually turning raw metal into something that's exciting, and I'm actually getting successful at it now, make sure you guys say you want to see that too. Like I said, it gives you guys plenty of opportunity to tell me how I'm doing it wrong because I know there's CNC machinists and programmers and modelers out there. You guys love to prove me wrong, so let's do it. All right, guys, see you in the next one.